Welcome to the Balanced Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Matt Southam. Here, we delve into candid conversations with entrepreneurs, exploring both their business journey and their secrets to maintaining mental well-being. As we navigate the balance of ambition and inner peace, I hope you find insights, inspiration, and invaluable takeaways in every episode. Thank you for joining us. Hi Dale, welcome to the show today. I want to start by asking, I've heard you say you've got 50 years of experience, but clearly you're not that old. So explain that process to me.
Sure thing. Cheers for having me on, Matt.
Pleasure.
Said it a few times now. Basically, because I started in the trade that I'm in as soon as I left school. Once you take into account the overtime and the weekends and the long hours and stuff, I've probably got, if you compare that to a normal 9 to 5 sort of 35, 40-hour work week, I've probably done the amount of hours of a full-time normal person that's about 50, 55 at the age of 37. So I've had the roll-on experience of raw time of someone quite a lot older than me.
Yeah, and I guess actually you're saying, talking about working in the trade, all of your years have actually been slightly different with new challenges, new tasks, because a lot of the time you hear someone might say, I've got 10 years of experience. What they mean is they've got 1 year of experience repeated 10 times, but actually yours has been quite a journey.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Yeah, for sure. So you've got started off when I was literally when I left school, even before I left school, really. Learnt with my stepdad, bathrooms and kitchens, that sort of thing. Then quite soon after leaving school and going into it full time, unfortunately, my parents separated, and through one thing or another, basically ended up doing it on my own. Rather than, I say just be, there's nothing wrong with honing in on one trade and getting really, really good at it. You end up becoming every single part and wearing every single hat of a business, be that the actual jobs themselves, moving across to, like, for a bathroom or a kitchen, which is where my specialization lies. You have got that thing of, you're not just a carpenter, you're a carpenter, a tiler, an electrician, a plumber, and you have to either cover all those bases or have enough of an understanding in those bases to properly guide other people to get those bits done for you. Other side of the fence, every single year on, year off, you are picking up those skills of project managing, ordering, paying, running jobs. And yeah, you're absolutely right. You're picking up a section of each bit as you go, aren't you? For sure.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I can see how, whether you're managing the job and you're getting someone else in to do that specific role, or whether you're doing it yourself, you've still got to understand what the end goal is so that you can keep your client happy. So you do need to have that understanding of, at least a base understanding of how it all comes together, even if you're not the one doing it.
For sure. I mean, you cannot, you definitely cannot just go, I'm just going to pick up all these pieces and it's just going to work. If you can't see how all those pieces, how all that jigsaw puzzle comes together, if you can't see that recipe turning into a cake, there's no way you're going to be able to get the flour and the eggs and everything all in the right place for you, for sure. Having that role is probably arguably the most important, but not to detract from everything else that makes that cake happen.
No. I often hear, I've spoken to estate agents before, and kitchens and bathrooms are two of the main rooms in a house. Certainly nowadays, probably the kitchen has really become a focal point of many people's houses. It's where, cooking's done, but also socializing and things like that with open plans. So you're making a real impact on people's lives on those really key rooms.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they are the two rooms that you spend the most of your time. One of them, usually you're on your own in the bathroom, but people want that place to be that kind of peaceful zone away from everyone else. And they want it to be a clean, crisp, cozy environment for that role. And then kitchens, as you say, hit the nail on the head there, really. They are becoming the hub of everyone's home. And that is where you have all your friends and family come together, and people want that to be a core section of their home. And as you knock on from that, that's where a lot of people put a lot of their savings and budget to make that part of their home better and more useful for them. Definitely.
Yeah, and have you seen that a slight change in the way we use those areas? Because certainly you're probably ripping out ones that were done in the 70s, where a kitchen was just a functional area. That's all it was. But now, actually, it's part of the bigger way that we live.
Yeah, 100%. You've really got that whole classic. I want to knock the wall down and make it a kitchen diner. Is I would say easily over 50% of the projects we take on now. It's people wanting to make it part of the home rather than someone's just tucked away in the kitchen doing the cooking, for sure.
Yeah. So within your business, I mean, I'm aware, I'm a business owner. Business can be stressful, but then you're adding in the project that you're working on is also making the client stressed as well. You're having to often manage that when you're working in someone's house and you are making some mess. You know that the end goal is there, but obviously you're dealing with quite, I suppose, sensitive sort of situations where it could be another trade and something's overrun. How do you balance that between the stress of the client, you trying to reassure them and not get too stressed yourself, or don't you? What's the secret?
That's actually a really good question. I think it is probably one of the main skills or things to manage expectations of whenever you do this kind of project. Because if you were, a gardener, for example, it's outside, it's out of sight, out of mind. It doesn't matter if it's cutting the grass, anything like that. It's not really affecting the hub of the home. And when you're doing someone's bathroom or kitchen, more so a kitchen, they've only got one. People in bathroom world or having your bedroom done or anything like that, you've got other bedrooms, you've got other spaces, but in a kitchen you don't have a backup kitchen, or most people don't have a backup kitchen, and you can very quickly see those cogs turn and the frustration build up if things aren't as clean as they should be. It's definitely one of the main things to get right and make sure that you do manage those expectations properly. A lot of the shortfalls you'll have, week one will always be the messy one. It'll be when the walls are coming down, when the plastering is being done. And in that first week, most people are like, I'm having my kitchen done. It's great. But as the weeks go on, depending on how large the project is, it could be what we call a dry fit, which is just a straight swap for a kitchen, which is extremely quick. But when you're linking it in with other trades and other people, the ability for it to knock on just increases, people being off, things being damaged. A lot of we tend to avoid it now, but client project managed stuff we really don't get involved in, because when those things do happen, they do become an issue. For example, you'll do everything, get it ready for the plasterer, but the plasterer doesn't turn up for a week, and if it's not plastered, we can't do the next stage. So then that delays it. But if it's all in house, you are able to just line them up in a row, and get everything done at the right schedule. So that's one of the main ones. Another thing is obviously, everyone should do the role they're meant to do. Clients are great at picking what they want and knowing what they want, but not necessarily good at project managing, because that's not the role that they've trained for and the role that they've done day in, day out. So I find that's something that's definitely best avoided. Letting people trust you is another big deal in itself, because you've got to convince that client to go, look, this is what I do for a job. Let me do this for you. And you'll have to trust me that it will be the best way it could possibly have been. And the other side of that coin, no one's perfect. I mess up, you mess up, we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
And a lot of that time, I think owning that mistake and working a way forward is always a far better received thing than trying to make an excuse or make a reason why it wasn't your fault, or point at the person over there. And those I told you so conversations you don't want to have with people either when other people are involved. So it's always better just to take that responsibility and find answers to it, because most people are cool with that stuff if they know that the route forward to getting it sorted and getting to a conclusion, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess those soft skills are probably something that, people don't talk about enough when starting a business. They often start a business because they're good at whatever it is that they do. They might be working for someone else and they're good at what they do. There's no doubting that. They go out to start on their own and maybe don't understand how there's all these other different hats that you have to wear, and actually, managing people, managing your cash flow, all of that actually really comes into it. And I loved what you said about sort of owning your mistakes, or taking responsibility, even if it wasn't directly your mistake, and actually being able to say to someone, look, okay, this has gone wrong, but this is what we're going to do to fix it. Because quite often it's not the problem that frustrates people; it's how it's fixed, and the journey that's taken there. Do you find that as an experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we work on new builds now and then on stuff. Usually we're domestic clients, but that often builders get us involved on projects and stuff, and even clients doing a self build. Which, going back to my earlier point about clients project managing stuff that they don't project manage, you will have that happen a lot, and every other trade or supplier will say it's the other person's thing, and that can take months, like weeks at best, months at worst, of people to back and forth, or even worse, you get to the end of a project. And I mean, to use a real example, we did an eco house over in Polegate recently. Been going on for quite some time, and the solar panel guy turned up after it was all plastered and just about to be painted, and basically destroyed about 3 walls to run his solar cables because nobody decided to tell him that the plastering was being done. It's and to him, he gets annoyed because he's like, no one told me, and then he'll just destroy stuff happily because he's got to get his job done. But then no one told the plasterer, and and the knock on of those things, and because when there's no accountability and there's no one to ask and no one to check and no one to streamline these things, that is where you will have those issues, and everyone's right and everyone's wrong, sort of thing. It's a terrible place to be, because you're kind of sitting there going, well, it's not my job, which is a horrible phrase that I lads use all the time, which really frustrates me, because the sooner everyone realizes you're actually all on the same team, we're not stealing work from each other, the sooner something a lot better can come from it, definitely. But yeah, going to your point on the people who are good at their job, not everyone who is good at their job should be self-employed, because being good at your job is not necessarily mean that you're good at running your own business. I learned that, I started out on my own when I was 16, and essentially thought, yep, this will all just come to me. I'll just do what I'm good at, and it'll all be fine. And it's a skill in itself to learn, and in retrospect, that my path could have been very different. I mean, I'm sure we'll get onto those bits later, but the path I'm on now, I'm super chuffed with the effort I've put in and the highs and lows of it all. But I could have very definitely just gone and worked for one of the bigger firms and been one of their best employees. Ironically, people who have been self-employed probably do make the best employees. They just don't want to be the best employees.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, do you think there's that grit is often a word I've heard used, but that determination, because certainly those first few years, and for many people 5 years, maybe even 10 years, it's a slog. You're doing everything, but you're still learning, because not many of us are necessarily taught whether it's the small details and dealing with those problems as they come up, things that almost you can't write in a textbook. It's just you discover it through experience. But having that determination to keep going seems to separate some entrepreneurs from other people, and that's not saying that they haven't got something. It's just you've got to be really determined to get through those tough times.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Definitely. So yeah, I think you've got to have a certain level of grit, like you say, because I mean, they say, you've got to keep on going, keep on failing until you stop failing, because if you give up, you failed, haven't you? So it's there is a certain amount of, you just have to keep on trooping with it. It's I think it's an important one to digest internally and come to terms with. While there is no course really, to teach you that stuff, the learning it by doing, failing by doing, getting it right by doing, they are the lessons where you learn them the best. is the realizing what doesn't work, realizing what does, realizing whether or not, carrot and stick is the right way of encouraging staff and clients, and how you sell and how you manage. And I think that's very personal to each person. But also you get people who are further along in the journey than you, who will also give you that advice that you just wouldn't get. I mean, we've known each other for quite a while now. The amount of back and forth that we've had, just the value I get just from bouncing ideas off you, whereas you're in a totally different world to me. You're not in a different world from the business side. You're in a different world from the trade, the craft that we've both got really good at. And so there are definitely transferable skills and experiences that we can take away to become better ourselves. A guy called Gary, who is a house builder who I've known for a long, long time. He's given me tons of advice over the years, but the first thing he ever taught me when I was like 17 was that when you lose, not necessarily. So there's a big distinction between working for a loss or working for less, and that is my biggest parallel between lads like subcontractors, usual subcontractors who just work for a day rate or work for a price. Their ability to comprehend working for less versus working for a loss, and that main difference that Gary told me was that you have that thing of if you lose me on something, you just got to think that money whilst it was a loss, it was a training course that you paid exactly that much money to learn. And if you you go on a project and be like, do you know what? I totally messed up how long this would take. It's gone over by a week. I've just lost $3,000. The materials are totally misquoted, and you just go, right, well that course cost me $3,000 to learn that lesson, and I need to make sure that I get value out of that course moving forward. And then you just you don't make that mistake again. You probably make a variation of that mistake as we carry on the adventure that's life. But that was one of the biggest takeaways I had is getting that differential, and it's trying to get people to realize the difference between the two is a challenge sometimes. But yeah, that goes on to your point earlier about not necessarily everyone who's really good at something should be self-employed, because that lesson is a tricky one to learn.
Yeah, I love that the idea that the loss is, that what you've invested in a course, in a learning course, to learn that actually what that failing has taught you. Because you're right, you never fail unless you actually just stop, just use it as something to propel you forward, learn from. And, you commented about being able to bounce ideas off each other. Actually building up a network of trusted people is, I actually think, is really key in business. A lot of people think, no, I'm going to do it on my own. But actually, your biggest strength is often the people around you, not necessarily within your sector. Sometimes that's really helpful, but also just other people to give you some advice, or, run an idea past, or just support you on those weeks when actually you've had a really challenging week.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've got contacts in and outside of the trade. One of my longest, equal of it is a guy called Jamie, who's a plumbing and heating engineer, and we've known each other literally since we both started. And we have a flip flop every Christmas Eve. We'll save the other one from some disaster that has Christmas, and it's become a bit of a running joke now. And we actually went out for a meal last Christmas Eve because we managed to not have to save each other on Christmas Eve, which was quite a milestone. But yeah, having people who are in that same boat as you, even if it's not the same trade, is a crucial part of it. You've got to have people that are in your tribe and rooting for you. Even if, like you say, that is not in your world, people do empathize and do understand that it is. You probably actually know better than me, but I don't know what the percentage of self-employed to employed people is in the UK, but I feel like it's a smaller percentage than we all realise, and the people understanding the unique challenges that we go through in this world is like I was chatting to someone the other day about it, and it's like, oh yeah, made my plan, got this job, moved to this job, moved to this job, and I was like, that's awesome. It's like I've never known what I'm doing month to month. Like, I mean, now we're booked up for like 6 months, or we have been for years now, really, which I'm blessed in that regard. But I've never known if that month's going to be a good month, that month's going to be a terrible month. The stability that comes with employment is something that I've never known, and I find it really interesting. The different viewpoints on that, and being able to understand what that's like is a skill in itself.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I think, it is really tough. People have always been employed, or people have always been self-employed. There is a difference in understanding the risk you're taking, what it feels like when it's getting to the end of the month and it's a bit of a tight month. And especially when you've got staff, you've got a team, and, you always want to look after them. I think bosses as such, they come in and sometimes get a bad rep that they're just in it for themselves. But actually, you feel real commitment to the people who are working with you, because they've also got a family, and there's a massive knock on. And I think a lot of the time we take that pressure on, that actually we've got to support them and make sure they're paid, because as such, we're working for them, not the other way around.
Yeah. I have always wanted, a crew. I've always wanted. I could, back from when I was a kid, I could have just done it on my own forever and made more money than having a team. But I decided very early on that what I really wanted was a crew, and to have people that make something that helped more than just myself. And I mean, we've got 7 people now working for us, and that is 7 mortgages and 7 families, and and that being responsible for all those people, and also whether or not they know it or not, you put them first in every aspect. If there's been months where I've not earned nothing, I've earned less than nothing. You've made the loss, because the more important thing is that they get paid, because they signed up to work for me, but they didn't sign up to take on the stresses and the inconveniences that sometimes come with running your own business, and that is something that weighs heavy all the time. And they definitely need to come first, even if maybe they don't always appreciate that is what you do behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean that's so true, because when they signed up, they didn't sign up for those stresses, so we try to actually protect them from that, and actually just make sure everything is paid, and maybe don't always let on the fact that actually internally we're having a real struggle this month with making everything line up. How do you deal with that, or how have you dealt with that over the years, and have you managed to adapt? I often hear the saying that business doesn't get any easier, you just get better at business, from the fact that how do you deal with these problems? And certainly I've worked out coping mechanisms that are more healthy for me than others. Going to the gym or a walk is much more healthy than just getting drunk down the pub, because actually the problem's still there the following day.
Yeah.
How do you cope with things, or how have you learned to cope with things over the years?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I'm very luckily have avoided the going down the pub and drinking my woes away, which is a good thing to have avoided. It's I think it's also a very easy thing to get caught up in yourself, and to slippery slopes of the depression and the stuff that can come with all that pressure on you. But I've always been a believer in that what happens to you makes you who you are, and how you decide to react to that. And I've always, whilst not in any way putting down that it's a thing that exists, I've always found it very easy to not slip down that slope, and to just go, the only person that's in charge of my outlook and my attitude is myself. And I can either choose to deal with it, angrily and with frustration and blaming people, or I can make that choice to go, in actual fact, in whatever road this is, the responsibility of why this has happened in some way is down to me. And that could be that I've literally made a mistake. It could be that I've underpriced something and I'm putting pressure on the lads to get it done quicker because there is not that money there, which isn't their fault. Or it could be something totally out of my control, like a client has changed something midway through and we've already made those financial commitments to go down a road that now is not happening. All those things are things that can happen, or even just down to basic stuff like delays, cash flow and stuff like that. If you have a job that was supposed to finish on a Friday and something's delayed, that means that part isn't coming for another month. You could have 10, 20 grand tied up in a project project that is now technically not finished, so technically not due, and you've then got to deal with that shortfall, Peter to pay Paul situation all the time. But really, I first things first, I always think of the guys, really, because the guys that decide to work for you and the clients that decide to trust you with their projects, they're the things that come first. And if I end up getting internally stressed, that's the answer to that. Knowing that, it will pass is a really big thing that I wish I told myself when I was younger, because everything is temporary, and how you decide to take it on and deal with it is exactly what your attitude will be. I'm a big believer in that, it will pass and you will get to the end of it no matter what. And I've also found the stress that I used to get, like a lot, I used to get super stressed about, super anxious, super stressed about how to approach it and how to blag something or how to deal with something. And I found that really just being straight with people and just explaining the situation, even if it's not really their place to know that, like explaining to guys where you're at because of this and that. Maybe they don't want to know that, but it definitely gives it a better understanding of why you're in the position you're in and why the decisions you're making. Like, I've made some decisions that from the outside may not seem like the right decision, going to X and Y, and where we should just be on X all day. It's because X needs to get to a certain point, Y needs to get to a certain point, because we need to keep everyone happy. And these are a bunch of things up in here that you have no idea about, but I'm going to explain them to you so you've got an understanding of why we're operating in this way. On the total flip side of that, having 2 German Shepherds is an amazing de-stressor, and this whole thing's about getting the balance right, which is something that I feel like I've, in the last sort of 3 years, got a ton better. But I've spent, 17 years not getting it right and just working every minute of every day. But having people reliant on you outside of the business as well, that you have to make time for, is a really big motivator as well, because you have to walk that dog, you have to look after that dog, and that dog, all it cares about is you throwing a ball. And that is a good thing about just totally turning off and just and it lets you also, because you have to take that time, it lets you slowly digest and come up with answers to problems. Because, at the end of the day, I reckon our main hat that we all wear as self-employed people is problem solvers. And it is just a case of finding that answer and having a little bit of like that pause time to just digest slowly what the problem is, and go, do you know what? That's what I'm going to do. And then once you're back, you can start actioning that and getting a much clear-headed answer to your question, without reactively, say you maybe have a client send you a grating email, or you've got a lad complaining he's had to stay for an extra half an hour, or blah, 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 blah. Reacting immediately is often not the right choice, but having a measured reply that is better for everyone on balance is, even if that sometimes is falling on your own sword, is I think definitely a far less frustrating route to take.
Yeah, I love that idea of actually just stepping away from the problem sometimes helps you solve it much better than when you're too close. You almost can't see, there's emotions taking over and something to distract you. I love the fact that, you're out with a dog and the dog doesn't care about your business, and why should they? That's, they've got no interest, but you're going to throw this ball for me. Can we have a run? Can we have some time together?
Yeah.
And actually that does just help bring you down, and then in turn allows you the space to be able to solve a problem or solve an issue, or just think of a new idea that actually, if you were still stuck in front of whatever the problem is. For me, I often say, none of my good ideas happen when I'm sat in front of the screen. While this is where I do the work, it's not where I have the ideas. And often you'll have that actually you've been on site maybe, but you've worked out a problem when you're standing in a field with a dog, because you're detached from it. So, I mean, is that your main sort of source, getting out with the dogs? And that's a great way just to step away from work and, just have a bit of you time, but also with someone that also relies on you, but not in the same way that your team does.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, really. Yeah, it's definitely, it's a good sort of soft reset, and lets you realise that it's not, that's not what it's all about. And it even the same with my other half. She's an accountant, and very similar, runs her own business as well. And that's a good, like you said about our tribe, having the people in the same, not the same world, but the same running the business world, and you can bounce ideas that way, get a different point of view. That's always worthwhile. But yeah, definitely, concentrate on them is a good event.
So finish off today. What advice would you give to someone thinking of starting a business? Maybe they're already employed. What do you think they need to know about themselves or know about business that will help them maybe not make as many mistakes as some of us have made, where we didn't ask for help or we didn't get that advice early on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I could talk to younger Dale, if I could talk to 17-year-old Dale again, I would still tell him not to give up. I'd still tell him that, it is every bit of effort and heartbreak and loss and win that you make is all worth it in the end to get to the point you want to. I started off thinking I'll be, big I am, 10, 15 lads thinking, yep, I'll just manifest a building company into existence. And by the time I was 18, realized that was the biggest error I could have ever have made, and realized all of my failures and lacking for it. But also on the flip side, being patient with stuff. There are a lot of guys now, a lot of people are all after instant gratification. It's I want to buy crypto and be a millionaire in 2 weeks because that's how it works, sort of thing. That people, if you're going to be self-employed and start your own business, you need to be ready for the journey, because that is exactly what it is. And it's not about getting to an end place. It's about that journey that you're on being one of your growth for yourself and one of, what you can do for others on the way to that journey, all whilst doing what you love. Because back from 17-year-old me to 37-year-old me, I've loved every single moment of it. And it's if you do something you love, you will never work a day in your life. And for all the work I've done, I really don't feel like I have, or that any of it's been wasted, because there's parts and positives that I've taken from every negative that has ever happened. So I feel like my advice would be to embrace the journey, realize that it is a journey. It's not about getting to being a millionaire or whatever. It's about taking those steps one at a time and making it become something that you want and something that you're happy with, and something that you can also go to sleep at night about. Not necessarily about the worry, but about the morality of what you do as well. It's important to run a business that you want to be, have your name associated with. And I've gone from some guy who thought we could do a building company to now we've got a building company that's been around for decades now, and we've got a kitchen fabrication. We've got a brand. We've got a real kitchen mate called Varco that we have made, and that has come out the back of all the effort and experience, highs and lows that we've made. That is now something that can is coming up against Howdens and Wren on a regular basis. So it's and I would not be here now if I hadn't had the effort and all of the roadblocks and speed bumps that we've had in the way. But yeah, taking value from everything, be it good or bad, is probably my main thing I would say to people, and go for it.
Dale, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear about your journey and get your insights on that. And I'm sure, certainly anyone within the trade industry will really resonate. But in fact, anyone, running a business or thinking of starting a business will be able to take some, valuable insights from you. So thank you.
Thanks for having me on. I've been a keen watcher of these, and I'm looking forward to seeing the rest.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Balanced Ambition podcast. I genuinely hope the stories inspire you as much as they inspire me. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with a friend. And remember, by subscribing, you won't miss an episode, and it would truly mean the world to me. Stay balanced, and I'll see you next time.